Not safe. I don't want to send it to school because there's so many attacks on the school. 4:30 p.m. Uxbridge. A scream. 3 stabbed, 1 fighting for life. Police tasered a 22-year-old Afghan national. Authorities confirmed he was granted asylum in 2022. Within an hour, Britain had seen enough. Footage lit up every screen. Blood on the pavement, chaos in daylight. By nightfall, protests erupted outside migrant hotels across 5 cities from Kent to Southampton. They were funded by British taxpayers, and now they've turned the knife on Britain's own sons. £8.2 million a day, 51,000 housed in hotels. How many more warnings before Britain erupts? Stay with Brit Alert News because what's coming next begins inside the Commons. Inside the House of Commons, tempers fled while the blood on Uxbridge's pavement was still wet. Arrivals are up more than 50% when compared to the same period before the election. Illegal arrivals up 52%. Hotel use up 47%, and yet less than 2% of those who cross illegally are ever removed. The Home Office calls it progress. Britons call it betrayal. And while Westminster rehearses its lines, the streets outside are already breaking. Labour calls it humanitarian management. Conservatives call it system strain. For millions of taxpayers, a government that's lost control of its borders and its people. Parliament adjourned in noise, not answers. And outside, Britain's patience finally broke. Free hotel, free food, free damers, free money. Southampton moved first, 60,000 on the streets, flares in hand, banners raised. Portsmouth followed with 35,000 more. Brighton with nearly 20,000. At dawn, the entire south coast was alive. A wall of far flags and fury. At Highfield House Hotel alone, 250 riot officers faced a wall of rise and fury. Protect our women. Save our kids. The chants rolled like thunder. Bottles flew. Pepper spray drifted through the air. 14 officers injured, 24 arrested. And yet the crowd kept growing. Veterans, mothers, students, the unemployed, united by anger. The flames weren't just on the street. They were in the bloodstream of the nation. It wasn't about compassion anymore. It was about consequence written in blood. Government asked for calm. Calm didn't come. The lion was never wounded. It was silenced. Now it's breaking its chains. By sunrise, Southampton was no longer a city. It was a message. Very important. They need to stop illegal migration into this country. There's still smoke above Portswood Road. Police sealed off the Highfield district. 47 arrests, 19 injuries, and more than £2 million in property damage. What began as protest had turned into siege. The Home Office called it a contained disturbance. Locals called it revenge. The council met in silence that morning. Officials promised investigations. No one mentioned the crowd outside chanting, "Southampton speaks for Britain." The message spread faster than the government could erase it. The lion was awake now, and its first roar came from Southampton. Inside Downing Street, the atmosphere was war room tense. Ministers arrived through the side entrance under floodlights, faces grey, voices low. By 7:00 a.m., the Prime Minister had summoned an emergency meeting of KOB. The first question on every briefing sheet was the same. Who lost Southampton? Intelligence reports warned that coordinated protests were forming in 12 other towns. Police reserves were exhausted. Over 9,000 overtime hours logged overnight. The Home Secretary demanded total control. The Defence Minister refused, calling it a domestic war we can't win. Leaks began within hours. A memo titled Operation Restore Silence surfaced online outlining curfew zones and media blackouts. It spread faster than the government could deny it. By midday, the stock market dipped 2.8%, and foreign press described Britain as a democracy in recoil. Inside the cabinet room, voices rose. Someone shouted, "You can't police 67 million people." No one answered. The Prime Minister stared at the red briefing folder marked National Order Act Draft. He didn't sign it. He just whispered, "Contain it." But the truth was already out, and the country was no longer listening. By noon, the split inside government was public. 2 cabinet ministers refused to endorse the crackdown. One resigned live on air, calling it a betrayal of the British character. Another, a military veteran, warned that deploying troops against civilians would shatter the covenant forever. Still, the Home Secretary pressed forward. 2,000 soldiers were placed on standby under Operation Fortress. Armored vehicles moved toward the south coast. The official line, logistical support. The footage, though, but told another story. Convoys under Union Jack flags heading toward a city still reeling from smoke and glass. Civil servants leaked more files. Police morale down 37%, public confidence down 62%. And somewhere between those numbers, Britain felt the ground shift. A source inside Whitehall described the mood in 3 words. Fear of ourselves. Outside number 10, reporters shouted questions that no one answered. The Prime Minister hadn't appeared for 31 hours. The gates trembled under the weight of flashbulbs and silence. Inside, aides drafted one sentence for the evening statement. The government remains in control, but no one believed that anymore. By nightfall, the blackout began. Major broadcasters replaced live coverage with nature segments and cooking shows. Social media throttled videos tagged Southampton, but the truth had already multiplied. Mirror copies, proxy uploads, foreign servers. Within 24 hours, 47 million views. The footage was raw. An old woman screaming through tear gas. A line of police shielding an empty hotel. A child waving the flag upside down. Every image undercut the narrative of order. BBC insiders leaked internal memos marked public reassurance package. ITV presenters refused to read the scripts. For the first time in years, the press broke rank. A front-page headline in the Herald read simply, "What are we defending?" That question echoed louder than the protests. It reached classrooms, barracks, EPECs, even churches. Priests began quoting psalms about false kings and blind shepherds. In a country that once prided itself on stability, the silence from power became the loudest sound. And across Britain, people stopped waiting for permission to speak. They filmed, they shared, they remembered, and the digital blackout turned into the brightest night the country had ever seen. 36 hours after the first riot, the Prime Minister finally appeared. A national address filmed on harsh white light, no flag, no applause. Arrivals are up more than 50% when compared to the same period before the election. Hampton, an isolated security breach. But the words fell flat. As he spoke, thousands watched from phones, not televisions, live commenting, mocking, translating every phrase into disbelief. Outside, crowds gathered again. In Portsmouth, veterans sang the national anthem. In Nottingham, teachers held candles. In Manchester, 10,000 stood in silence for the injured and the ignored. The anthem echoed line by line. Send her victorious, happy and glorious. But the tone wasn't pride. It was warning. Inside Downing Street, staff whispered that the speech felt like a eulogy. Even allies described the Prime Minister as a man out of thumb. And when the broadcast ended, there was no applause, only the sound of clapping from outside. Slow, deliberate, defiant. It wasn't celebration, it was countdown. At dawn they came. Hundreds of veterans marching without banners, without slogans, just medals on their chests. They lined the streets of Southampton shoulder to shoulder. Silent reporters called it the March of the Forgotten. A retired sergeant told Sky News, "We defended this country once. Now we're defending it again from within." Police were ordered to disperse them. Many refused. Several officers simply stepped aside, saluting as the veterans passed. That image, the salute, spread faster than any riot footage. By midday, over 60 towns held parallel vigils. For the first time in decades, Britain looked at its reflection and saw a division wearing a uniform. In Parliament, emergency debates turned to chaos. One MP shouted, "You've lost the public. You've lost the army. What's left?" No answer came. By evening, veterans across social media posted a single line, "We serve the people, not the politicians." That night, soldiers guarding Downing Street lowered their weapons. And for a moment, the standoff that had defined a generation turned into something no government could order respect. The next morning, Britain woke to quiet. No speeches, no press, just streets swept clean by exhaustion. But under that silence, something irreversible had shifted. The government held on technically, but authority had already left the building. Power was now in the hands of the people who refused to forget. From Uxbridge to Southampton, from the Commons to the coast, the same truth echoed in every home. Britain was never broken, just unheard. And now it was speaking again. The lion wasn't returning to sleep. It was watching, waiting, remembering what it means to roar. This is Brit News. If you stand for truth, subscribe now and stay with us, because the next roar is already coming.